Dear students, I decided to record a video regarding the individual presentations, and I'm extending the deadline till Monday because some of you, especially those in the cohort A, have not participated, have not attended the last class, which is so vital for your good performance in this last assignment, and which is why I decided to once again cover this material, making sure that you are ready to do your final presentation. As I said, the deadline is extended till Monday. So let's go. Well, first of all, this presentation format is completely different from the informal presentations format, which you already used, already you know it, and you delivered and structured presentations as a group using that previous format. This one is different because it is targeted. It is the recipient of this format of presentations is busy executives, and busy executives are they don't have enough attention, they don't have enough time, they're always distracted, and they want to see your recommendations. Well, what you do with busy executives is you provide them with recommendations. You do not need to gain any trust. So there is no ethos, completely no ethos in these presentations. And there is minimal pathos here. So these presentations are predominantly focusing on logos. So persuading them with facts and giving them the recommendations up front. That's why this presentations format has a certain structure, and this structure is the following. What you need to do, you need to provide your recommendations up front. You need to structure your presentation around your recommendations. You need to use structuring tools to lead your audience through your presentation. You need to use formatting effectively to get your point across. And finally, you need to reuse your recommendation slide again at the very end. Now, what did I just do? I read through the slides, which I usually do not do during our classes, during every communication that I have with my students, with my audience. Why? Because the format of my classes is informal. Now, this one is a completely different one. As I said, you need to, prioritize the presentation and its content versus engagement of your audience, which means you have to be like the secondary, you have to be the attachment to the presentation. And the presentation has to be the most important thing in this communication. So you're reading through it, you're not talking outside your slides, you are being upfront, and you are being to the point. All right, let's go through the presentation. Provide your concise recommendations up front. Your recommendations should be informative and concise, standalone sentences, not vague statements. And also, my recommendation is to have 3 to 5 recommendations. Human brain cannot process more. There is more. If there is more, aggregate them. Have not more than 5. Continuation of my first point, provide your recommendations up front. As I said, you need to read all your slides word to word. All the slides contents should be read word to word, no talking outside of the presentation. The only connector words or phrases that you can be using can be so, as I said, etc. Everything that kind of connects, one slide to another, but you're not talking outside of your slides, okay? Why are we doing this? Well, because as I said, if you are there standing in front of the executives, it means that, you are qualified already. You don't need to deserve their trust. Okay. So, and also you are presenting the results of your team effort, because we are pretending that, or we are kind of considering that we are consultants here, and research has been done, some analysis has been done, and that analysis is the most important thing, and not you, unfortunately, right? So that is why we are giving them the presentation kind of key points, which are the recommendations, the presentation kind of essence upfront, and then the entire purpose of your presentation becomes to justify what you just recommended. Okay, so give them the recommendations up front, and then the entire presentation will be devoted to justifying, to saying why you recommended what you just recommended. The second point I have is structure your presentation around your recommendations. What do I mean by this? You probably have noticed that every recommendation that I have, which I showed here, the sentences that I have here, they migrate to the top lines, or how we call it, lead lines of your next slides. Okay, so you see, I have my second point, and it is a copy paste of the second recommendation. Okay, again here, and then when I switch to the next one, the third point, that third point migrates to the top of the next follow-up slides. Okay, which means that each recommendation you provide, upfront in the first slide migrates to the further slides as a lead line. You cannot thus have a lead line that is not your recommendation, or you cannot have a top sentence on the top of the slide that has not been promised in the first slide. All right. This is what I mean by saying structure your presentation around your recommendations. Each slide thus should have a lead line, which is your recommendation, and it at the same time states the important message of your overall slide. What do I mean by this? I mean that this lead line has to essentially be the summary or the main point or the main kind of message that reflects the contents of this slide. Or from the other end, if you look at it, this all what's written here on the slide can be summarized in this one phrase, which is your lead line. Now, also your very first slide, your recommendations slide, also needs to have a lead line, which becomes the key point of your entire presentation. We call this an overarching recommendation. So imagine that you see me I'm the CEO and you are the consultant. You see me entering the building and you're entering the building with me, and we are in the elevator going up to the top floor where you're going to be delivering the presentation. And when I ask you, I mean, what is it that you're going to be recommending? And you have like your 30 seconds or less to just summarize it with one sentence. That is the sentence that goes to the top of your very first slide. So this one sentence, the overarching recommendation, should be summarizing the entire presentation. Okay. Now, you probably have noticed that all of my lead lines, also known as recommendations, they all are sentences. They are not statements. Okay. Here it says structure your presentation around recommendations, period. Structure is a verb. It's an action item. And it makes this, top line a sentence, right? So all of those recommendations, all of the lead lines should be complete sentences. Now, to show you visually what we do in informal types of presentations, we sometimes use statements. We sometimes use just words, right? Now, in this format, it is unacceptable. Why? Because if you remember, you are the attachment to your presentation, and your presentation should be kind of self-explanatory. So if the CEO gets distracted, if he kind of, loses attention and kind of looks up, and he or she sees existing markets or new markets or market tests, statements, they have no idea what you mean by this. A much more user-friendly for the executive format would be to have a sentence that when she or he looks up, he reads this sentence, they understand what you mean by saying existing markets, and they read existing markets have become saturated. Wow, I understand now. Or instead of market tests, which again is kind of nonsense for them, they read tests of the markets have had positive results, and you're like, oh, okay, he is or she's like, well, now I understand what they mean. So sentences are much more self-explanatory. They're much more helpful in this particular format. So all of your recommendations, which will later become lead lines, they have to be sentences. I have one example here. I mean, the problem with this slide is that this is a statement. This is not a sentence. It does not have a verb. It says ease of doing business report. I mean, what about it? Okay. Now, instead of saying just ease of doing business, you want to reflect the contents of this slide in one sentence and describe the content of this slide with this one concise sentence, which is your lead line. Latvia showed growth, but reforms are still needed. All right. Moving on, use structuring tools to lead your audience through your presentation. What do I mean by this? Structuring tool that you probably noticed I already use. The first one is using a separator slide. What is a separator slide? It's basically the roadmap of your presentation. So it is your first slide. And because we know that we are structuring our entire presentation around our recommendations, we're showing this first slide as the table of contents, and we are emphasizing somehow with this round or square figure with an arrow by, emphasizing it with color, however you want. But, when you emphasize the point which you are going to be talking about in, your presentation, what is to follow, it kind of becomes more self-explanatory. It's kind of helpful for the audience to follow your presentation. So separator slide is one structuring tool that you want to use. Another structuring tool, you probably noticed already, is the summary box. Now, the summary box is very useful. Why? Because following the structure of your or structuring your presentation around your recommendations only makes it a very robust, very kind of, structured way, very kind of, strict way. So sometimes those lead lines, they can be too general, and they can be reflecting the contents not fully, which is why we have the summary boxes, which we, by the way, can use sentences, statements, whatever, several sentences, whatever is helpful for the audience to understand better what the contents of this slide is. So that's the summary box. Moving on, use formatting effectively to get your point across. And what I mean by this, first of all, the visual appeal or the simplicity, better to say, of your entire slideshow. I recommend that on this, in this format, on the executive level, you want to be using black and white compatible slides. What I mean by this is avoid colored backgrounds. Avoid relying, the explanation of your information with colors, right? Because if you project it to a wall, for example, if there is no screen and the wall is kind of dark and your background is dark too, the slide's not going to be visible. If you, print out your presentation, and that presentation relies heavily on color, and the printer is black and white, this is going to be gray, and this is going to be gray, and you cannot refer to your lines with colors as you initially planned. Now, if you use textures, it becomes much more kind of possible to avoid using colors and explain, the figure or the line that you want. Also, it becomes kind of, much more kind of visible to the audience if you avoid too much color. Now, also, data should be expressed using charts and graphics that can be understood at a glance. This not only, is about avoiding tables and showing your presentation or your numbers, your data with graphs and charts, but also it's about using the summary box for providing the main message of your chart. What exactly do you want to communicate with this chart? And also, summary box is the only opportunity, by the way, to explain it more, because your recommendation word to word has to be as a lead line, because you are structuring your entire presentation around them. But also, what I mean by, at a glance, I mean, not only the message should be here, this is a bad example, and this is a better one, right? There is a message that is that is a sentence here, but also you want to be using, the textures, or, you want to emphasize the important information in the slide. You want to be providing the totals. You want to be providing the dates, the sources, all of here's legend, which is in a bad example. You do not want to have legend. You want to explain which segment of the pie chart in this particular example is about what, instead of having your audience looking up and down and connecting your legend with the segment that it belongs to. Okay. Also, here's a good example. This lead line, I mean, or the explanation of the chart is not helpful, right? If you make it a sentence that actually makes sense, your audience becomes much more kind of served or helped or loved, and they understand what you mean, right? And again, busy executives, they do not have the attention, they do not have the time for difficult decoding. Okay, now you want to make it easy for them, and making it easy is what it means is making them work less. Okay, so if you make it easier for them to see and understand right away, it will help you avoid problems or additional questions, and and that would respect their time. Okay, now I'm still here. You see, I used the separator slide to show you where I am. I'm still at this point usefully effectively to get your point across. And here I have a guideline, basic graphs that best reflect relevant type of information. So depending on the type of information you want to reflect, you want to show, you want to kind of communicate in your slide, there are certain types of charts and graphs that reflect a certain type of information better. So just use this guideline. Hopefully it will help you better communicate your data. Okay, further moving on, my last recommendation is reuse your recommendations slide at the end. Just like, I did here, you want to show your last kind of guideline chart, slide, to summarize what you just said. So you started with it. Your entire kind of information was within your presentation, structured around the recommendations. And then once again, you're showing that last slide to summarize your point, to say to tell them what you told them, right? So this is a very similar format to the military structure, which you, I'm sure, know very well by now. And according to that military structure, you had to tell them what you're going to tell them, you had to tell them, and you had to tell them what you told them. Showing the last slide at the end is telling them what you told them. Okay? Now, what I recommend you do, use an old school pen and a paper to lay out your presentation, to structure it out, and kind of literally draw it and time yourself as well, because you have only 9 to 10 minutes in this video that you're going to be recording, and you cannot expect that the busy executives are going to be listening to you for a longer time. So what I want you guys to do is to, once again, let me summarize, to have around 10 slides, not counting the title, the thank you, the questions, and the separator slides. I want you to spend not more than 10 minutes recording and explaining, going through your presentation. Avoid animation, designs, etc. Make it black and white compatible. Do not use clients, logos, or corporate branding. So, for example, this case is about Coca-Cola. Do not use their logos, as if you own that logo, because you don't own it. And what else? The summary boxes and everything, separator slides you should be using. You should be using the first slide to kind of lay out, to give the guideline of the presentation. You want to structure a presentation around your recommendations, the visuals, separator slides, and so formatting tools and summary boxes, as I said, black and white compatible, and also finally show your first slide at the very end as a last slide as well, to summarize your presentation. So this was the format which I expect that you're going to be using for the format. Now, what are you going to be basing your presentation on? The Harvard Business School case that I posted as the last material of the course. It's called Coke Vending Machine. Read through the text, understand what the case is all about, and form your position. And I don't care what your position really is, because what I want to see, how you use the format. I'm not really concerned about if you're going to be advising the CEO to go on with the vending machines or to stop the project. Whatever you recommend them, try recommending it in the format that I just presented to you. Now, the deadline was today, by the end of the day. Now, I understand that some of you, because you do not know the format, because you were not there, you will start to improvise, you will start use your creativity and use the previous or your students' knowledge or the knowledge of those who were in class. So to avoid that, phenomena of or Cellini, I decided to record this video and give you the information firsthand. So that's why I'm extending the deadline, and I'm giving you the weekend and the Monday until the end of the day by midnight. Make sure that you submit this presentation to me. How you should be submitting it by Monday midnight, please record a video, share the link of that video with me. Do not send me the video via email, but send me an email with that link and your presentation. Okay, so submissions with just the link are not going to be accepted. Submissions with just the presentation are not going to be accepted, right? And because I extended the deadline, emailing me, me emailing you and requesting to complete your submission is going to take a lot of time, right? I have to submit the final grades, and probably, it will delay the submission. So please, once again, record the video when you are presenting and your slides are on the background. You can use the Zoom call just as I did to record yourself and send me the link and your presentation. Thank you and good luck. And I'm looking forward to receiving your submissions by Monday midnight. Thanks.